Welcome to the Art of Being a Mum podcast, where I, Alison Newman, a singer, songwriter, and Aussie mum of two, enjoys honest and inspiring conversations with artists and creators about the joys and issues they've encountered while trying to be a mum and continue to create. You'll hear themes like the mental juggle, changes in identity, how their work's been influenced by motherhood, mum guilt, cultural norms, and we also stray into territory such as the patriarchy, feminism, and capitalism. You can find links to my guests and topics we discussed in the show notes, along with a link to the music played, how to get in touch, and a link to join our supportive and lively community on Instagram. I'll always put a trigger warning if we discuss sensitive topics on the podcast, but if at any time you're concerned about your mental health, I urge you to talk to those around you, reach out to health professionals, or seek out resources online. I've compiled a list of international resources which can be accessed on the podcast landing page, alisonnewman.net/podcast. The Art of Being a Mum would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and water which this podcast is recorded on, as being the Boandik people in the Berrin region. I'm working on land that was never ceded. Hello and welcome to another edition of the podcast. It is such a pleasure to welcome you from wherever you're listening all around the world. This week, my guest is Breanna Churchill. Breanna is an educator, an author, and a mother of two boys from Illinois in the USA. Initially, Breanna thought she was going to be in the performing arts area or journalism. However, her desire to serve was overwhelming, and she went into the field of early childhood education. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in early childhood with a concentration in child and family services. Her professional experience includes working as a teacher, a childcare director, a tutor, and a family community service worker. Breanna is now a full-time home educator, Sunday school teacher, and she's an author. She's also the founder of the Brown Bear Book Club. The club empowers parents and guardians and educators with book ideas, activities and tools and tips for young children. Caregivers can stay connected with her latest book releases and early childhood resources through the club. One of Breanna's missions in life is to empower, educate, encourage and inspire parents and guardians and educators of young children. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much, Breanna, for coming on. It's such a pleasure to welcome you today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. So whereabouts are you in America?
So my family and we live in Illinois. It's like the Midwest of the United States. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And we were just chatting before that it's quite nice, the weather there at the moment. You're saying like 80s Fahrenheit, so about 26 degrees in the Celsius.
Yes, very, very nice here right now.
Oh, I'm a bit jealous. I was just saying I've just been away in Queensland for a week, and the sunshine every day, and swimming in the ocean, swimming in the pool, and just, I don't know, just the best. And then come back here where today it's 13 Celsius. So I'm just going to look up what that is for you guys in the Fahrenheit.
Oh, yes. I'm interested to see what that conversion is.
So about 55. So,
just a little cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't get snow here. So this is probably the coldest, maybe 10 to 13 in winter during the day. But it just seems to last so long. Like this will be like us now till probably October, maybe September, October. And I just feel like half the year is just like,
yes. I totally understand. I can only imagine.
Yeah. But never mind. There's worse things in the world. So I really shouldn't complain about weather. But
when I used to live in Chicago, it would get below zero, -17.
Oh,
yes,
serious?
Below freezing.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's nuts. I'll stop complaining.
Yes. Yes. So cold, you can feel the frost on your face.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. No, that's a whole new one. Oh dear. right. So now tell me about what you do. I know that you're an author and you also run
Yes.
the Brown Bear Book Club, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
Share with us, what you do.
Yes. So I'm the founder of the Brown Bear Book Club, which is all about empowering parents and educators with resources, books, and resources for young children. And through the Brown Bear Book Club, I have a YouTube channel. I write children's books. I design adult notebooks and journals because, as we know, as parents and educators, we need our tools to keep us refreshed so we can be ready for the little ones.
Yeah.
And yes.
So your background, I was reading, you're trained as an early childhood, or I guess early childhood educator. That's what my words over here in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you always been interested in children and those early years of learning?
Yes, I would definitely say I've always been interested in creating fun things with children. So I'm very much so a hands-on educator, and so music and art, and I love the messy painting. I love creating musical instruments with recycled materials, and so I've always enjoyed even as a child, I was very just love writing, love just engaging in just fun sensory activities outside. And so now, as an educator, I would say the interesting thing, though, when I was in high school, I honestly thought I was going to go to a performing arts school.
Yeah.
Because my passion was really in acting and journalism. But when I got to college, I do have a passion to serve and help children as well. And so I kind of use the creativity of being in drama club and writing. I've been writing probably since I was 8 years old. And I put all those things and I try to create a fun learning environment for children and my children as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm trained as an early childhood educator too, and probably
Oh,
not to the same level as you, but I work in a kindergarten at the moment, like the
Oh,
preschool,
that's
and
exciting.
and
Yes.
I can totally relate to what you're saying because like I find that my experience in performance and singing and just having that ability to share yourself really vulnerably, I think is really important when you're with kids. There's a lot of people I've met over the years, they get really nervous about singing in front of kids. And it's like, you don't have to put on a performance for kids. You literally just
That's right.
sharing your voice. And the kids don't care what you sound like. They just want you to be
Nope.
involved. So I can totally relate to what you're saying because I feel like kids, they see right through you. If you've got a persona that's not genuine, or you're trying to pretend you're someone else, like you're not being true to yourself, the kids will see right through you. So I feel like having that confidence in knowing yourself and feeling comfortable in your own skin, which I think comes from being a performer as well, it just works so well with being with kids.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. So you have two children of your own. How old are your boys?
So my oldest is 4 and my youngest is 2. So just 2 boys.
Yeah.
So we are full of lots of adventure over here.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So
yep, he'll be actually starting kindergarten in the fall.
Oh,
so we'll
awesome.
be yeah.
I love it. So do you find since you've had your children that you've got like a whole new level of like inspiration when it comes to what you're creating for, the kids that you're serving?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with children's books. All of my children's books have been inspired by my children.
Yeah.
And so they definitely have a huge influence. And then the other half is after becoming a mom, I wanted to, the experiences that I gained in the classroom and in the field of early childhood, I wanted to still share that. So that's why the Brown Bear Book Club came, is using the education and experience to share that with others. And then I feel like once I became a mom, I also gained another level of experience and being able to relate with parents of young children from a parenting perspective. And so I take all that into consideration when I write children's books or any type of resource for families or educators.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because some books that you read, and I'm sure you've come across them in the past too, some books you read, you can just tell there hasn't been a lot of consideration given to, I don't know, a lot of things. But, the person that's got to read this book, they've got to, get something out of it too. And actually, I was speaking to some ladies yesterday. I was interviewing for the episode that'll come out this week, that they've written a children's book, but it's actually aimed at mothers. So, there's so many opportunities for getting in, different layers of content and things to make you think, and then things that'll spark conversations and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's a lot more complicated than it sounds, isn't it, really, when you think, I'm just writing a book for kids, but there's so much goes into it. Yeah.
Yes. It's so many components to think about, and actually with my newest book, The Little Bird Who Wanted to Fly, it was my 4-year-old who even helped me come up with the title.
Yeah, right.
Just because, that's who the book is designed for, young children. And I think, definitely, you want to make sure you are targeting them in a way that they can stay engaged.
Oh, yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. So what sort of themes do you like to explore within your books?
So some of the topics that I like to explore is I always try to, when I write children's books, I always try to, number one, make sure that it's captivating. So the element of literacy, whether it's captivating language, whether it's colorful illustration, some of the concepts, as I'm thinking about my latest book, is life lessons. So teaching children, not to give up the first time you try, to be patient, to persevere through challenges. But then I also try to include interactive moments where children can move and they can dance, and there's like the birds are singing. And so I try to have a mix of, life lessons, especially in the last book that I wrote, mixed with movement. My second book had a lot of onomatopoeia, so lots of like highly expressive words, whoosh and bang and boom. And I've created my own song to that one, my second book.
Yeah.
And so, I'm a musical educator, so everything has a song. Yeah. I sing all the time as a mommy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. And I noticed in one of the photos that you sent me that when you're reading the book, it's almost like you're performing the book. You're standing up, you've got your props. It's a whole experience for the kids. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I try to captivate and engage children. We get up, we dance, we move. I have my little bird puppet. Yeah. And so I think especially with young children, it's super important.
Absolutely. So I find that, depending on the age or the experience of a child in a certain setting, it's really hard for kids to sit down and concentrate for long periods of time. And a book like what you're talking about is amazing. And you're not only like in Australia, I mean, and you guys have it there too, but in Australia, we have all these particular things that you have to teach, like curriculum-based stuff. So you're covering your literacy, you're covering like your movement, expression, and all that sort of stuff. Yes. So it's like really good.
Yes. I try, and I think when I'm writing, I try to think about, well, as a teacher and as a parent, what are some concepts that I want to put in there along with the story. And so like the latest one, it has math, it has color recognition. It has,
Yeah.
movement, music, all the different things. So anything I can try to encompass the full package to
Yeah.
make it easier. So, yeah.
That's brilliant. I love that. I'm going to have to get hold of some of your books.
Thank you.
No, I love it. It just, yeah,
Yes.
like you said, it's literally you're getting all of that education, all of that knowledge and value for children
Mhm.
into one book, and they hardly even notice you doing it too. Like they just,
No,
it's really
you
interesting
do it in
actually.
creative ways.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny on a completely side note. My 7-year-old had to come with me to work the other day, and he was
Mhm.
playing, and he said, "Oh, it's at kindy. It's different to school. They don't teach you anything." And I said, "Oh yeah." I
Oh,
said, "You don't realize that you're learning though, because you're learning through play
that's
and you're learning through
right.
experience." And he
Learning
sort of
through
went,
play. That's
"Ooh,
right.
yeah," which is
Yes.
so important. So, talking about when you became a mum, did you find your transition to motherhood? I don't want to say it was simple because I don't think it's ever simple, but how did you find like the change in your identity and how you saw yourself sort of adjusted when you became a mum?
What a question. I feel like when I became a mom, a mother, I felt like I wanted to be present. And
Mhm.
so I went from teaching full time to my last school year. I knew that I always wanted to be home with my kids after we had children.
Mhm.
And so I think I was very excited to be a mom. But then once motherhood came, I realized that it was harder than I thought.
Yeah.
And I found myself kind of hard on myself because being in the early childhood field, you think about all the different things that you want to expose your child to. And so
Mm.
far as my identity, I felt like I just wanted to be this great educator mom. Like I wanted
Yeah.
to do all the things. And the idea of, well, after I became a mom, maybe within that year, I said, well, I want to share these activities that I'm doing with my baby. I want to share these activities with the world. And
Yeah.
shortly after, it wasn't the Brown Bear Book Club. It actually started as Our Home, Our Classroom.
Yeah.
And I would just share activities, whatever music or art activities we were doing. And eventually, when my son was a young toddler, we were trying to learn the alphabet. And that's when my first ABC transportation book, that was my first book,
Yeah.
and that was born. But as far as my identity overall, I think I was just in a place of, I just want to be this great mom that educates her children. And
Mhm.
but I think it was lots of twists and turns, and it was harder than I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah.
I often joke with people that um, childcare educators or early childhood educators have the worst
Mhm.
behaved children. And I'm not making presumptions on your children, because it's funny, like, you know how to talk in a particular way to kids and you do it all day long.
Yeah.
And then you talk to your kids like that and
Mhm.
they don't listen to you. I don't know if you find that. But I was actually joking with a mum last night on the way after we finished work because I couldn't get my son to open the gate. He was just being so silly. He just wanted to shut the gate in our
Yeah.
face. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like, I don't know. It just reminded me of
Yeah.
that when you were talking about how you want to give your kids so much. And it's like, I don't know, sometimes you feel
Yes.
like, oh, you've got nothing left for them because you give it to other people's
Yeah.
children.
No, that is so true. I mean, and I'm all about apologizing even to children,
Yeah.
even to my children. And I feel like I mess up every day, and I'm just like, not perfect. And I apologize. But I think children need to see that, because then they learn what from us. And my son, now he's heard me say, will you forgive me? Sometimes when he makes mistakes, he says, Mommy, do you forgive me? And I'm like, oh. So yeah, it can definitely be difficult at times, but it's so worth it. Such an adventurous journey, motherhood.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And all the twists and turns. And so at the moment, is this something that you're spending all your like basically a full-time sort of days on, or you're doing some classroom teaching, or how's it sort of look for you?
Well, right now, so as an author and an educator with with my business, the Brown Bear Book Club, I get up early mornings. So usually I'm up I'm up by between 4:30 and 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So I start, So I usually start my morning. Usually I have a little bit of a quiet time. And then after I have some quiet time, I will, sometimes I'll exercise, just kind of depends. And then after that, I'll work for a few hours. And then usually my kids are up somewhere around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then I homeschool. So we start,
right.
our activities, and then I'll work again in the afternoon for just a couple of hours. So part-time, very flexible.
Great.
This is kind of how I wanted it to be.
Yeah, that's lovely, isn't it? That you've got that, and you've got your children with you, and you're also sharing, that love that you have for and the passion. Oh, how awesome. Do you ever like pinch yourself like, this is amazing, my life is so good?
I don't know if I pinch myself. I think for me, one thing I'm learning about motherhood and being an author and an educator is just like children develop in each phase, I feel like I'm also developing as a mom. And so I find myself rearranging my schedule based off of their development.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's been helpful, and I'm still learning. I'm learning every day.
Yeah. And that's the thing that children, they, obviously, they change so quickly. They get into
They do.
a phase, and then all of a sudden that's gone and something else is happening. So yeah, being able to adjust, it's like a skill, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Do you find that in addition to, doing, your homeschooling with your boys, you're obviously using your creativity in that element, but do you find it's really important that you have something for yourself, that's, I don't want to say it's just yours, because obviously you're sharing it with others, but something that is yours,
Yes, I think it's important. Honestly, I think that creativity is part of keeping a healthy mental health as a parent, as a mother, especially those who are creatives. Like if you are a creative mom, doing something creative is part of your self-care. It's something that fuels you, it refreshes you. And so for me, like when I journal almost every day, so if I'm not writing a children's book, I'm journaling, or I'm reading, or music, singing or something, because I feel like that's, as a mom, that I feel like I thrive off creativity. I used to make jewelry too, but I had to make a decision, either continue making jewelry or focus on my career as an author. And right now, that's kind of where I'm focusing on right now. But Yeah. So I think it fuels me as a mom, it refreshes me to have that outlet of, okay, I'm just going to write for a little while. And it's so calming, it's soothing, and I love writing. Yeah. And designing too. Like when I design the journals,
Yeah.
it's just like, woo.
Yeah.
So much
Yes.
fun.
I could absolutely relate to that. It's like it feels like you just get this fresh energy, and whatever
Yes.
you were doing out there sort of disappears, and then you can come
Yep.
back like super refreshed, and yes, you can handle anything.
Yes.
Really, can't you?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
You talked about one of your boys helped you come up with the title for the book. How do they sort of feel? I don't want to say how they feel about it, but is it exciting for them? Do you think that they can see that their mum is creating these things, is making books, and
So I think they just now realize that I'm an author.
Yeah.
Because prior to like my first two books, I didn't even tell them because I wanted to see if my book was going to actually captivate them. It wasn't going to be a book that they liked, regardless if they knew that I was the author behind it. With this last one, because I'm doing more book tours and reading everywhere, they know, like, okay, my oldest particularly, he knows that I'm writing books and I'm an author, and he oftentimes, I bounce ideas off of him.
Yeah.
And so, but no, I think right now they're still so young. I don't think that they really totally understand the fullness, and that's fine with me. I'm not a person that wants to be like, hey, I'm an author, or I'm kind of fine with being behind the scenes, and if you could, so
yeah. I had a lady on, an author, I think it was last year, and when her son realised that she was writing books, he was like telling everybody, "Oh, my mum wrote this book," and he'd take it into school, like, "My mum can come and read her book to you at school," and like so proud of her. That's so beautiful. I love that. So I think it's important for children to see their mums do other things apart from, mothering them. I think it's really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I one of the things that I'm hoping to do, especially as my children get older, is invite them more into the process of, like, especially like when I'm doing the story times, if they want to help me, do something, pass out stickers to the kids, or well, in the stories, they're usually they know how the story ends, so they're very interactive when they come to the story times. But it's refreshing because it's a career that I feel like I can do with my kids, because it is picture books right now. So yeah.
You're listening to The Art of Being a Mum with my mum, Alison Newman.
So one of the things I like to chat to my mums about on the show is this concept of mum guilt, or mummy guilt, or however you want to term it. Is that something that you've got some thoughts on? Is that something you feel or don't feel, or what do you think about that?
I feel I think in the early stages I felt it a little bit more, mom guilt, especially if I felt like I didn't get everything done that day, like in the house. Like if things were just kind of, I'm gotta go, but the house is a wreck. Dinner's not done, but I got to go to writer's group tonight, or if I feel like I wasn't as engaged with my kids that day, sometimes that can make me feel like mom guilt. But here lately, especially after having my second child, I realized that when I do step away, like when I go to writer's group, or if I have a book interview that my kids can't come to, I've learned to be okay with it, because I'm like, I was with them. We had quality time. I will be back. I'm only gone for an hour. Most interviews don't take very long.
Yeah.
And so I tell myself my children are safe, they're fine. And I don't feel guilty, because I know that, well, I'm not gone every day. It's not like I'm, I purposely chose to be an author so I can control my, my schedule, even as an educator. I'm not gone all the time. I think that if I had a more demanding career where I'm gone all the time, then I think it would be harder for me to leave. But I think because right now everything is pretty flexible, I don't feel as bad. No, I don't feel bad at all anymore, really.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've given, mommy will be back. I'll be back in an hour. And I always tell them that I'll be back. Like when I have writer's group, I'm going to writer's group. I'll be back later. Or mommy has an interview with someone. I'll be back. And they're with their dad. My husband is very hands-on, and they love their daddy. And I don't leave them with anybody. So it's usually daddy or their aunts. And they usually have a blast with them. And that also helps me feel great, knowing that they're in good hands. And,
Yeah, nah, that's good to hear. I think mum guilt's just this thing that, I don't know, it could suck us down if we let it, but,
Yes, it can. It can. But we have to give ourselves grace. You have to give yourself grace to know that it's kind of like when you go to create something, whether you're an artist and you're painting or writing music, me writing stories or journaling, knowing that when I leave and when I come back, I'm going to be refreshed and ready to be better for them. So it's not like I'm leaving and then I come back and I'm like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
But I think when you do something that you love, and I even believe when you're doing the thing that God has called you to, when you do it, you come back refreshed and refueled, as opposed to, I'm not to say you don't feel tired, but you know what I mean? Like you're in a better mood as opposed to a bad mood.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It fills you up and it lights you up. So that,
it lights you up. Yeah.
I love that. Nah, that's so cool. So you said earlier about that, you're working full time, but you knew that you wanted to be there with your kids, like when you had kids. Was that like a role modeling thing that you experienced or have seen other people do, or like in your own family when you were growing up, that made you sort of want to do that?
No, quite the opposite. I grew up, my mother was a single mom, and so she worked a lot. She was working a lot. She was going to school, and so she did the best she could with being present with me and my brother. So for me, it was the fact that my mom was gone a lot, and I was like, well, I appreciate the fact that I got to learn the importance of hard work and being professional and all the things career-wise. But I knew that when I had children, I wanted to be able to be there. I wanted to be present. And so that was actually an inner desire that I had as before motherhood. I'm like, I want to be there. I want to be that mom, that can make the games and be there for t-ball practice. And so for me, that was my desire because I grew up in the opposite situation. My mom did work a lot and I didn't get a chance. But I think even with parents who work a lot, because I'm sure maybe some of the listeners here, I think that, there's still grace because I feel like when you are with your kids, it's not always the quantity of time, it's the quality.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. And it's hard. I think sometimes, your circumstances don't allow you to necessarily do,
yes,
the things that you really want to do. So, yeah, like you said about your
that's
mum,
true.
you do the best that you can with what you've got at the time.
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask too, I've noticed here in Australia that homeschooling's becoming a lot more popular. And I don't know if that's because of COVID, like when we had all the shutdowns and everyone got used to having their kids home at school and realised that it was actually not a big deal. But it's pretty popular over there, isn't it? It's a real thing, isn't it?
I definitely think it's a growing trend, I guess you can say. I definitely did not know that I was going to be homeschooling. This was kind of something after having our children, and this was pre-pandemic. It was kind of like the church that we go to, a lot of the women there were already homeschooling, and I just kind of got exposed through the community. And people start telling me about it, and I'm like, oh, I never thought, I always knew that I wanted my children to go to, either a private school or a Christian school, but I didn't know that I would be homeschooling. So honestly, it really came through the influence of my community as I was connecting with other moms and families. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And then also as an educator, and as you know, Allison, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in Illinois, the education system is, it's some school districts are better than others. And so I think that was also a driving force, knowing that I'm not satisfied with what I'm seeing and in the turn and what's going on in my current the education system here. But there are great teachers. I know that was a big bomb I just dropped. There are some great teachers. There are some wonderful teachers. My friend actually teaches kindergarten and she's amazing and love her. I still teach on Sundays and I tutor in a small group learning community. Yeah.
I feel like sometimes like the overall system, and I can think of this in a number of things, like over here, the healthcare system is a bit screwed and different things. But within that, there's always really good people who are just trying their best, under really difficult circumstances. So I can understand what you're saying about the teachers. And seriously, teachers have to be the most underpaid and underappreciated group of people, I feel. Like for what teachers do. Seriously, there needs to be more recognition and more monetary recognition for them.
Yes, more recognition. That is so true. I don't know, in Australia, do you guys have Teacher Appreciation Week? Is that happening this week for you guys?
No, I don't. I think we only get a day, actually, and I'm not even sure when it is.
Okay. Okay.
It shows how much I appreciate.
This week is Teacher Appreciation Week. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I was actually thinking when I saw when Joe Biden became the president and his wife was a teacher for many, many years, I thought, well, this is good, having someone up there that gets what it's like to be on the ground, in the rooms, dealing with it day to day.
Yes. So
I don't know if that's been a positive or not, but...
Well, honestly, I think it's so many things. I think, it depends on the district that you're in. I think there's a lot of great resources out there, but I think we also have a lot of children that are coming in from different backgrounds that a lot of teachers are not prepared for.
Yeah, right.
for what types of stuff you might be dealing with. And so I think that, I mean, I don't know if you've heard, but in the US, teacher shortage in some states is worse than others. People are quitting the field, overworked, overwhelmed, and underpaid.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a thing here, particularly here in the early childhood. That's the biggest thing. We can't get childcare workers. That is the biggest thing at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's just the same thing. They're just totally overworked, unrealistic hours and expectations, and the pay is just not reflective of the amount of effort that you're putting in. And you're literally raising people's children. You know, you're educating the next generation. And I just feel like it's so undervalued. I don't know.
Yes.
I could start ranting, but
yes, no, I agree with you. It is undervalued. I think the teachers' pay should be up there with doctors and physicians' pays, if not higher, because you are educating the next doctors, the next lawyers, the next judges, the next teachers, the next musicians and artists. You are putting into all of that, and it's definitely undervalued. But I think parents during the pandemic, I think a lot of parents appreciate teachers a lot more than what they did.
Yeah, when they can see what they well, I mean, not what they do, like a tiny snapshot of what they do. Yeah, I actually had this conversation with a fellow educator a couple of years ago when all this pandemic stuff was happening, and we had over here, you guys probably had something similar where there were particular workers who were considered essential, so you could still go out and work, but then there was others that had to quarantine. And of course, you know, teachers, educators, we're essential, so we were out there looking after. This was when I was in childcare, and I said to this fellow educator, like, we should be the highest paid people on the globe right now, because if these people don't have anyone to look after their children, they can't go out and, you know, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a policeman, you know, politicians running the country. Who's looking after the children? You know, it just blew my mind to think, like, we are so essential. If you didn't have us, what would happen? You know?
Exactly. Parents would have to switch careers. People would have to take their children to work. I mean, there would be, without teachers, it would not be good for a lot of families.
Yeah, absolutely. And you imagine the amount of people that, probably the mums, that wouldn't be able to, you know, pursue their dreams and their careers, and also within that adding, you know, contributing to society, and it would take a step backwards. Like it would be like tremendously damaging. So if anyone's listening that can make any changes.
Yes, that's right. That's so right. That is so right.
But yeah, no, within, you know, I'm saying all this stuff, but it is it's an incredibly rewarding field. It is the best.
It really is.
Best thing I've ever done. You know, it took me till I was nearly 40 before I discovered this, or not 40, I would have been 35 maybe, discovered this whole new field.
Journey.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like, why didn't I discover this when I was, you know, out of school? But I think I had to go through so many things and experience all these other things to get me to the point where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Oh, fun. No, it's good.
That's so amazing. Yeah. And it's not surprising, because some of the best teachers are artists. Some of the best teachers are creatives, people who are creative. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's
especially
awesome.
for the early childhood years.
Oh yeah, it's just so fun. I mean, it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, but it's so fun. Like I work Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, and I find myself on Mondays and Tuesdays I think about the kids. What are they up to today? And what are they going to tell me about when I see them? You know, you get you make these beautiful connections and build these relationships with the kids, and it's like, oh, I wonder what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sound like a stalker. coming up in the future, tell me, have you got any more books in the works, sort of fucking around up there?
I have, so right now I'm in a stage. So right now I'm still marketing my latest book, The Little Bird Who Wanted to Fly, but I am drafting up a few ideas. And so I'm in the drafting, brainstorming stage of it. I have a couple of stories, a few ideas that are in the brainstorming phase. One thing I try not to do is rush the creative process. I have quite a few stories that I've just written and said, I don't know. And even this book that's out right now, I wrote it over a year ago and I didn't touch it for a while. And it was actually a fellow educator, one of my friends, and she's like, children need this book. You need to pick that back up. But sometimes I just write and I'll put it aside and I do pray about it and I talk to friends and I talk to my children and I'm like, what do you think about this idea? And so I don't rush it, but yes, there will be more books. I do have a blog on my website that I've been writing more on, and I do have a YouTube channel. So I try to stay engaged with the early childhood community, especially parents and educators. So I try to keep it going all year round. And there'll be more books and journals as well. So
awesome. So what is the best way for people to find you? What's your website?
So the best way is www.brownbearbookclub.com. And I always encourage parents and educators to join the club. It's totally free. And when you join the club, that just keeps you in the loop of, I send out early childhood activities, book ideas, encouragement, freebies and giveaways. And so, and then any book updates. So as I began to work on the next book, or as I'm still putting up book marketing wise, I include people a part of that journey as well. But then I also want to give back. So I try to, whatever, like right now it's May. So I just talked about Teachers Appreciation freebies and Mother's Day, different things like that. And so, that's how people, and then the Brown Bear Book Club, pretty much on any social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of that. The Brown Bear Book Club, and you can find me there too.
Awesome. I'll put all the links in the show notes for people to click away and check out what you're up to. Thank you so much for coming on today, Breanna. It's just been so lovely to chat with you. I really enjoyed it. It's been really nice.
Oh, thank you, Allison. I'm so glad to meet you as well. This has really been awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for your company today. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love you to consider leaving us a review, following or subscribing to the podcast, or even sharing it with a friend you think might be interested. The music you heard featured on today's episode was from Alemjo, which is my new age ambient music trio comprised of myself, my sister Emma Anderson and her husband John. If you'd like to hear more, you can find a link to us in the show notes. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please get in touch with us via the link in the show notes. I'll catch you again next week for another chat with an artistic mum.